Welcome, everybody. I want to thank you all for dropping by here today. I am going to spend a few minutes speaking to a very good friend of mine, a woman who has been an inspiration to me as I've been building my businesses. This business mogul is somebody that has inspired millions and millions of people across Canada and around the world. And she's been a really special blessing to me because I've watched every step she's made in her life. And I first got to start building a friendship with her as she accepted to become the keynote speaker at our very, very first real estate Investors Summit. And then as our friendship has grown over the last 5 years, I've had a chance to get into her life and see behind the scenes what really makes this woman special. And not just as an entrepreneur and as a human being, but literally as a business titan. And anytime I get a chance to introduce her to my following and people that I know, it's a really, really good time for me. But this video is an introduction video that I first actually saw myself when I first met Michele. It's a few years old, but I've never seen another video that really introduces Michele this does. So let's watch this together and we'll get started.
Great entrepreneurs are fast and they're constantly trying things, because it is those iterations and those tries that ultimately leads you to big innovation. You know what makes you a killer entrepreneur? Being an entrepreneur.
Clearbank, which was co-founded by venture capitalist Michele Romanow.
The startup has also rebranded itself, changing its name to Clear Co.
A lot of money, you mentioned $1 billion.
Tech titan. She is an engineer and a serial entrepreneur.
This is like my most important life's work, right? If I can do anything in this world, it is to help and defend founders because they ultimately build the world we want to believe in.
Welcome to join me here, Miss Michele Romanow.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, how's it going?
It's great.
Listen, I want to spend a bit of time with you and talk about fundraising because I know this is something that you and I share in common for our understanding of it, and we're out doing it all the time.
Totally.
And then, of course, there's a lot of people here that are going to be listening to this in the chat. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and ask the questions whenever they come to your mind, and we'll do a little Q&A session after that. You know what I'm about to ask you now. You are seen in the world's eyes as a business titan, a business mogul, a business consultant, 20 years on Dragon's Den. You've invested in hundreds and hundreds of companies. I'll save some of those specific questions for that later. But how you got started is an iconic story, and I want these people to hear it. It's so freaking important for you to go through a little bit of that beginning story.
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, I think the first thing is that I think you can become an entrepreneur. I don't think they're born. I think they're made. And it's funny that some of that's even in that video. So look, I was a kid, grew up in Calgary, told I could study anything I wanted to as long as it was engineering. So I ended up in engineering school. And, it was there that I had the lucky fortune of meeting, my business partners, two other like-minded guys. And we spent all of our time playing what's the next $1 million idea. And, we had to try like tons of things and going through lots and lots of ideas until we finally figured out that we should pursue caviar and fish farming, which is absolutely crazy. And we got our start by entering business plan competitions, winning some money, and then, believe it or not, moving out to New Brunswick, having never gone fishing before, and building a caviar fishery from scratch. That's everything it sounds like: boats, fishermen, my hands knee deep in fish, the whole 9 yards, figuring out our own distribution path across Canada. And it was a wild experience and moment into entrepreneurship. And I think I've still never forgotten where I came from and how much work it is, how many times you have to try, how you constantly feel like a failure. And that's really both the life of a founder and the life of a fundraiser.
It's funny because you've sat at the top of major, major growing businesses. And I'll tell you something that I just realized today where I'm at in the growth of our new corporations is I've had that chance to build a business up and be close to the top of it where there's lots of money flowing and you get to live this great lifestyle. And then for some reason, you're starting again.
Yeah.
When you start again, you're literally starting again. You're sleeping on couches again. You're going through that rigmarole again. And I have a feeling that that's not something that's unique to me, that's something that's unique to all entrepreneurs or all founders. And I'm just wondering, what comes in your mind when you hear me talk about that?
Well, I mean, it's just always feels like that. I mean, I was 10 years into my career. We sold our first company. I was 28 years old. I was absolutely over the moon. And then I knew I had to build another company. And that startup felt pretty much like the same first one. I mean, we, rented a hacker house in San Francisco. I lived with, the five guys that were our developers. We would start the day at 8 a.m. We had this fundamental belief that there's not one day in a day, there's 4 days in a day. There's a day before 10 a.m., there's a day before noon, there's a day before the middle of the morning, and there's a day before midnight. And if we could just go 4 times faster by cranking out way more work, we would. So I can remember, I mean, for the first, and then we moved back to Toronto from San Francisco. And I think all of our employees came to our condo for almost another year. I mean, this is like living and eating and whiteboards everywhere. Like you are in the dream. And a lot of people, just don't want to do that. They want, structure and boundaries and privacy. And, I just don't think that you have that luxury. When you're going to go build something, you have to be like really intense and intentional about that. And that doesn't mean, all you need to live in one house. That was the setup we had, but you're pretty much always thinking about work. And so it doesn't matter. And then there's ups and downs in absolutely every business, right? If the most successful companies like Nike and Apple had moments that they were almost about to go bankrupt, every other company does too. And so even when you're a couple of years in, you're at 10 million in revenue, 50 million, 100 million, and you're still going to have those moments where you're like, oh my goodness, I might lose it all.
Mm.
Really
Pause.
selling it, hey?
Oh my goodness. Now, when you look back, you get to look back at hundreds of companies. How many founders do you think you actually know, like legitimate founders that have started companies? And I don't know if you've ever been asked that question before, but what number comes in your mind?
Like thousands. I mean, we backed 10,000 founders and $5 billion just at Clearco. I mean, I didn't know all of them, but I knew quite a few of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in the space just alone on Dragon's Den. I've seen more than 2,000, 3,000 pitches. So I've met a lot of founders. This is like what I know, the spaces I understand. I understand how to take things to 0 to 1. I understand how to scale a company. Probably not great at running a public company, but I have a real skill in being able to build something from scratch.
So when you think about all those founders, if you were able to pull out a subsect of the really great ones, the successful ones,
Yeah.
think about their personalities and their skill sets and give me 3 things that you would suggest to anybody who wants to become one. You need to focus on these 3 things if you're going to get there. What are those 3 things?
I think, the first thing is you just need to have this resilience where you're not taking no as an answer. I mean, no means that maybe I didn't explain myself. No means let me try again. No means let me go make some progress. No means let me present this in a different way. But there is a lot of resilience in all the failure that comes. And the good founders, they just have this sparkle in their eye where like when people underestimate them, you're just like, oh, you just watch me. Like I think that's really, really important, this resilience piece. The second piece that's really important is the ability to sell. Do not become a founder if you do not want to sell. You have to sell everyone. You have to sell to get investors. You then have to sell to keep those investors updated and happy. You have to sell to actually sell your product. You then have to sell employees to join your team. You then have to conflict manage of all the trouble that comes your way that you didn't anticipate, that you didn't know. I mean, there is a lot, and that is a skill set that you will, always need. And then, I mean, those are probably like the top ones. And then you also need to have a curiosity and an ability to learn everything in your business, because the problem then is your company scales and you get to hundreds of employees, social structures is people start playing tricks on you, and they don't even mean to play tricks on you. Everyone's trying to hold their job and everyone's trying to present data in the best way. And so then your gut around, do I understand how things are working well enough that I can ask the right questions becomes really, really important. And so if you're one of those people that's like, oh, I don't want to understand accounting and I just like tell my accountant to do it, you usually get into trouble, because at the end of the day, you need to deeply understand most of the big elements of your business.
So those are the skills. How does somebody who wants to get there, how do they develop them? Like what's the path you would tell somebody to go on?
You start a business. I mean, this is one of those things where I don't think we can teach entrepreneurship in school. I think we learn by doing. This is the ultimate of start something, try something, fail, learn from your mistakes, have some mentors along the way, have groups like this where you can talk to other people about what they've done, what has worked well. I had a really good YPO forum group that was helpful to me. Like those are the types of things, you need to be thinking about.
Fundraising.
Yeah.
You need money to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And you didn't start doing this with a bank account. You didn't, and I know you might have had some friends and family in your life that had money, but they weren't giving you any of that money. You started without a
Correct.
dime.
No, I
And
started at the zero.
yeah, and you today, you invest and fund things. So there's obviously a lot of money in your life today. Like in those early days when you're trying to raise capital, you're selling, obviously. There's a very specific way to do it. And there's a very specific amount of tenacity you need in that. Talk us through some of the things that come to mind, advices, stories from all the fundraising you've done, the billions of dollars that you've seen in your career. What is some of the best stories and advice that come just specifically to do with fundraising?
Okay, so when you fundraise, the first thing is you should set a time limit. You have to be ready. Your business has to be in a really good place where you can show some real growth. Or if you're at the early stages, you're showing some real promise. You've done a lot of work into the researching your stuff. And then you have to say, look, I'm giving myself till Christmas to raise this money. Because when you're on a timeline and investors are on a timeline, it's when you can create a process. And a process is when you have momentum, when one investor starts bidding to another investor. So in technology, the space that I'm from, early stage ideas are worth anywhere between $1 million company or $500,000 company and $100 million company. So what's going behind that? Well, it's the size and scale of the idea. It's the depth of the team. It's what is both the size of the opportunity and how well you're prepared to do it. And if you have early traction. And so I would think about setting this up as, something that you are so like, and when I go fundraise, it's like there's this slight air of like I'm giving you the opportunity to see this incredible opportunity that I'm giving you, and it's not going to be around forever. It's going to be bigger, and then delivering on that promise is constantly important. But I mean, the next thing, Ken, is this is like a game where you got to be prepared for a lot of no's. You have to start by doing pitches. You have to be prepared to throw away your first 5 pitches because honestly, if a fundraising pitch isn't a 9 out of 10, it's going to be a no. It's just the threshold for people to give you money is so high because there is so many good opportunities on where to put money now. I mean, think about our market today. There's lots of distressed assets. There's lots of things that people can't afford that are now going to be available at bargain basement prices. For your opportunity to be good, it has to be, a really compelling opportunity. So you kind of throw away your first 10 pitches, you get really good, and then you're going to do another 50. And in those 50, something will pan out.
How do you know when you're on the right track with a pitch? Like if you develop a pitch and you start going and you're not getting any traction, like how do you get yourself there? How do you look through what you're doing? I mean, that must be really fucking hard to do. Like when you're first going, because the natural thing that's going to happen is you're going to want to like you kind of get critical. You kind of get frustrated about it. How do you fight through that? Figure out what you need to fix in a pitch in order to make it successful. Like, how does that even work?
So every pitch you're giving, you should be coming 10 to 20% better at the beginning, and then 5%, and then 2% better as you're on your 12th or your 13th pitch. But this means you have to be really on, like you have to be paying attention like nothing else. I always like pitching with a co-founder because one person would talk and one person would read faces. And you're really, really looking if what you are saying is resonating. And I do an exceptional amount of prep for pitches. I do not do them where I'm like, I'm going to wing it. I have some slides, like tell some stories. Every word and every sentence you say counts. And so you have 3 minutes to capture their attention at the beginning, and that has to be on who you are. Hi, I'm Michelle, built 3 companies, scaled one to $1 billion. This is what I've done. And this is why I'm passionate about this opportunity. That story has to be personal to you. Something had to happen to you that this matters. It's not just because people remember people and stories more than they'll ever matter numbers. Then you're going to go on to like what the opportunity is. So in this world, this is broken. Everyone pays this amount of money. I can do this for, and then it's the solution. I can do this for way cheaper and way better. Then you're 5 minutes into your pitch and people have to understand your product. And I always say that 100% of confusing pitches get a 0. If you've confused people and they like don't really understand what the product is, what's unique, something about it, people will always say a no to that. And then at the end, you kind of talk about economics. And there's a lot more ways to like, go through this depending on exactly like the product and everything. But generally pitches need to be very concise. Like people need to hear something very compelling. And then you're actually seeing what analogies work, because analogies work very well in business. And when you make comparisons to how big a space is or how fast something grew and they can see it, they're like, okay, I can see that. And the last thing is nobody argues with traction. And so you can have the craziest, wildest idea on, putting real estate in somewhere that no one has ever heard of or anything else. But if you can show that you have 100 buyers ready, or you have really good rents, or you have numbers, it's a lot different.
I get lost in listening to what you're talking about, because when you're telling me these stories and you're giving this advice, I can feel the years and years and years of fighting that you've gone through to get where you're here. When you look at Shark Tank, I'm going to ask you the question that anybody would ask you. What's the one that got away? I know the answer to this, but I want to ask this for people that are here, because it's really fun to hear somebody who's successfully invested in some of these corporations that you already know the answer to that question, the one that you didn't do.
Yeah. So look, you'll never get all the deals, and you'll never see things, totally correctly. And everyone has a deal that got away. So 6 or 7 years ago, maybe, a woman came on the show, and she was wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and a backwards baseball hat with blonde hair. She was 21 years old, really young. She said, my grandmother likes sugar too much, and so I made these gummy bears that are made with stevia and not sugar. And then I tasted the gummy bears, and they tasted like really good. And most sugar-free candy at that point had maltitol and a couple of these sweeteners that really made your stomach turn.
Yeah.
And I remember, I'm a woman, so I'm sure I've been on every diet in the book. But, at some point, I was like, these are really good. She's like, yeah, I did it myself in my kitchen. And I'm like, okay, like this like almost tastes like a food scientist did this, but okay, if you did this yourself, like that's really impressive. And I didn't do a deal with her on the show. Jim did a deal with her on the show, but that deal fell apart. I actually met up with her. I can remember her coming to my office in 2017, and she wanted me to put in money at a $20 million valuation. She was doing $2 million in sales. So for a consumer company that often trades at one-time sales, which would mean a $2 million revenue company would be worth $2 million, $20 million seemed outrageous. She had a couple more investors on top of that. And she looked me dead in the eye and she goes, I'm not selling this company for a dime under $50 million. And I was like, it's a pretty bold statement for someone who's like never built a company, never done the iterations. Because there's a lot of places that, the business world, competitors, the deal itself, the market, all of those shifts are like massive when you have to bear through them.
Yep.
And, but I do remember the conviction in her eyes. I can remember how she looked at me. And I remember thinking it was just too expensive. It was just too much of a risk. Maybe if it was a $10 million or $5 million valuation, I would have been like, okay, let's do it. Anyway, that became SmartSweets. Tara Bosch made hundreds of millions of dollars. She sold the company to TPG for $400 million in cash, something like 4 or 5 years later. It was an epic miss on my part. It was an amazing product, and she did an incredible job marketing it and doing it. And she's a dear friend of mine. She's awesome, and she will always be my one that got away.
Now let's switch lanes. You've had some home runs. You've invested in some companies through Shark Tank that have been on the show that have knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
Who's been the best? What was your biggest hit from the show?
I've had a couple of good ones. I had, so talking about another $20 million company, Andy came on the show, which was the mattress company. They were doing $18 million of revenue. They wanted a $20 million valuation. I invested. All the dragons thought I was crazy for doing a deal at such a high valuation, and they sold for almost $100 million 18 months later. Great return on investment.
Yep.
I invested in a company called RVZ. That's the Airbnb for RVs. And they built one of the largest marketplaces in the space. They're doing exceptionally well. A recent one from last season was a company called Culture. I think you know about them, Ken, because
Yep.
you've seen the space, but I mean, they came in doing, I don't know, $1 million a year, and now they're doing a couple million a month. So they've been a great story, and they're in a space that's like hot right now.
Or
And then
cold?
there's and then True Local was another good one. I mean, Mark LaFleur was the was the other Terra, right? He came in, he said, "Look, I'm gonna sell farm to table meat, and I'm going to do it on the internet." And he was an incredible founder. When he was ready to exit, my partner and I helped him find his buyer, and he's done more with that money than most people could ever. I mean, Mark LaFleur is now running ultra marathons. He's driving race cars for Mercedes. He's doing all sorts of cool things. So
Yeah.
good for him for taking advantage of the opportunity.
So somebody just asked a question and I hate myself for this question even being asked, because whenever I hang out with you in public and I get a chance to do these Q&As with you, which I love to do, I always end up going down the same road. I'm sure it's feeling a little bit boring for you now
No, not at all. I,
because we
I
ask
like
these.
talking about this.
But one of the guys in the chat just said, "Have you ever done any great real estate deals?" And you've done a lot of real estate deals, but the one I want you to talk about is my favorite real estate deal, which was taking a house and turning it into a short-term rental in
Barbados.
Barbados. How is that place doing?
Oh, it's like crushing. So I wouldn't have done this. My partner really encouraged me to do this. We bought a 5 bedroom apartment building on the water in Barbados. You can look it up on Airbnb. It's called Coralita. And if you want to just see pictures, if you're curious, it's on the most beautiful bend in the water. I loved the land. I thought the building was like a bit quirky. It's like a Greek villa building. There's circular rooms in like many of the units. And I think the previous owners were doing like, I don't know, 100 to $200,000 of annual revenue. And I mean, we've 3x that, which is like pretty crazy for a real estate deal. I had to learn a lot. It's actually very difficult to maintain a coastal property because as much as you think seawater and sun is like a great vacation, it's also one of the harshest conditions to build under because
Oh, I
UV
can
destroys
imagine.
everything and salt destroys everything. Like things will actually rust in like 4 weeks. It's like you've never seen anything like it before.
Wow.
And so it was a really good deal on doing that. And then we've continued to look at interesting property deals. I actually just looked at one in Edmonton like last week because there's lots of shifts happening.
But that short-term rental, how many units is it in that apartment building?
6.
6 units,
Yeah.
making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And you're not spending a lot of time down there right now. So you've got a great system in place that you've pretty well gone hands off from it.
Yeah, it's a system and it's a team. We have a property manager down there. We have housekeeping, obviously down there, and then we use some of our team here to manage bookings. But once you figure these out, they're pretty good.
And in Edmonton, what are you doing out there? What are you looking at? Is it an apartment building? Because we're
Yeah,
hearing
it
a
was an
lot about
apartment
them out there.
building. It was an apartment building, but I think there's slightly different economics there. I mean, look, the advantage of a vacation rental, and they're not all like this. I mean, you also have to be like good at the internet, right? We were much stronger. We have to do a lot of work to optimize ourselves for the OTA booking platforms. It's not just like, oh, just plug it in and because you have a great place, people will stay there. There's a lot of work you have to
Oh, yeah.
with some of that stuff for sure.
You mentioned having curiosity and the ability to learn by doing and having mentors develop your skills. How critical is it to be intentional about putting yourself in rooms with those who have had success in doing what you strive to do? And what have you done to put yourself into those spaces? That's an interesting question.
Oh, I
Like,
did a lot. I did a lot. First of all, I don't think you should take advice from people that you don't want to be. I think
mm,
humans are very strange in this way. They like start a business and then they like ask their smart lawyer friend and their mom and their smart doctor friend. And like they all give you advice, but like you don't want to be those people. Well, I'm sure you want to be a little bit like your mother, most people do. But like for the
mm,
most part, it's very different. If you're taking advice from someone who's actually like built and grown a business that is ideally in a similar space, they're like very, very useful at giving you some advice and being able to be grounded. So I think that, I don't know, I did a lot. I went to a lot of conferences. I would always approach people. I would always say hi. I was trying to be very memorable. I mean, I don't know, I got in front of the head of Google and the head of Uber and all sorts of places where I could get, warm intros. So for sure, I did a lot of networking and still do.
There's a question here that says, have you ever had a hard time raising money? Have you ever gotten into the offices of lenders and people with a lot of money and they've ripped you apart and you've gotten a hard time from them? And how do you fight through stuff like that?
Oh, I mean, everyone gives you a hard time. Even like banks still give you a hard time. That's their job to give you a hard time. I don't think it's like extra special that I'm a dragon or anything. I don't always get preferred deals. I mean, I've raised, I don't know, almost $1 billion in private credit for Clearco. There was a
Wow.
lot of no's. There was a lot of negotiation. Those deals take 8 months to close. They're very, very difficult to get something over the finish line. And you're hearing no all the time, and then you're going back to people that have said no, and you're saying, "Oh, my numbers are better. This is better. We take another look." Like these are usually like really long dances, and so don't be afraid to talk to quite a few banks, quite a few private lenders. It's all totally possible.
Michelle, I know you're living an incredibly busy life right now. I want to thank you for coming and hanging out with me for a little while tonight. And I'm really looking forward to hanging out with you in just a couple of weeks in Toronto at the Real Estate Investor Summit.
Amazing. Amazing. Can't wait, Ken. Well, I can't wait to meet you all. Ken and I have done these events a couple of times. I'm really happy to be a partner in this and very happy to hear the stories, hear the pitches, and share whatever I can.
And this one's going to be really special because at this event, Michelle and I are going to be announcing a collaboration that we're super, super excited about. And that's all I'm going to say. You got to be there to learn about that. We'll see you guys all in Toronto. We'll see you very soon, Michelle. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you guys all.
Take care.